All right, so as we get into this next part here, you're going to be looking at the estates up close and kind of personally. So what I would like you to do in your notes is I want you to create something like this. I want the first estate here, second estate here, third estate here, and then I want it divided even further into three groups at the bottom. And what you're going to do is you're going to fill this in off of the lecture that I am going to give right now. So go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and create your notes like this. And I should be able to see this in your notes when you turn them in. Okay, so in the first part of your notes, or at least at the very top of the page, I want you to understand something. You need to understand there are 26 million people living in France at this time. So their population is pretty substantial. That's a pretty big country in this time period. And then from there, we'll divide it into our groups. So our first group is known as the First Estate. All right, so this goes under First Estate. And this is the group known as the Roman Catholic clergy. So these are people who work for the Catholic Church. Think monks, priests, monsignors, cardinals, anyone who does clerical work for them. These are people who work for the Catholic Church. Now this group is really small, okay? But they own 10% of all the land in France, meaning the church owns 10% of the land, and these people then control that based on their jobs. And even though they own 10% of the land, they're actually less than 1% of the population. So out of those 26 million people, this is only 10,000 people in all of France that fall into this grouping here. Because they work for the church, their job is to, first of all, kind of give up their possessions and live very humbly so that they can assist and educate the others. So their job is to, educate in terms of their religion, to assist the needy. That's their role, okay? And they're in this first estate because you have to consider they're closest to God. That's how they viewed this. Like they were in the first estate because they were closest to God. Now, the only person who can trump them is the king. So even though they're a relatively small group of people, understand that they don't really pay taxes. They are exempt, and they only put about 2% of the church's income back into the French economy. So we know that they, in terms of economic stuff, they aren't contributing like a lot back into the economy. And again, they are a church, so you do see some aspects of separation of church and state, but not completely, because that's a whole different discussion. But they were exempt from taxes. So the people that work in the First Estate are exempt from taxes. That brings us to the Second Estate. The Second Estate is different. They're going to be a lot different than the First Estate. Okay, this group here are going to be the rich nobles who own all that land. So we're looking here at a group of people who throughout history, their families have owned land, lots of land, and they've passed that down through generations. And what we get by the time we're in the late 1700s are these people with pretty big plots of land who make their money off of this land. And they also are a pretty small percentage of the population. So they are actually less than 2% of the population, but they are about 400,000 people. So about 400,000 people make up the Second Estate. And the thing about them is they are incredibly privileged. Because they own all that land, they get to make money off of that land, but they don't pay any taxes. So this group here, even though they do generate a lot of wealth for themselves, are not responsible for paying taxes in France. So they get away with that. They also tend to get away with a lot of things. Like they really didn't have a lot of rules or restrictions placed on them. And that's something that will become very frustrating later on for people, is that this Second Estate is kind of like used to getting away with things. So they just do whatever they want without any consequences for that. So there's our First and Second Estate. And I would consider these two the privileged estates. I also want you to know, and I would draw a line connecting this, the First and Second Estate both really hate the Enlightenment. Like they really hate the ideas of the Enlightenment. And think about it. They live privileged lives. They don't really have to answer to anybody. if the Enlightenment ideas go all the way through, they're going to have to, see people as equals. They're going to lose some of that power that they've had traditionally. So these two groups here, they don't really care for the Enlightenment. But that's going to change with the Third Estate. Now, the Third Estate, I want you to write these two facts right here next to the word Third Estate. They are over 98% of the population, which equates to 25 million people. So 25 of the 26 million people belong to the Third Estate. That is an overwhelming amount of people. And like I showed you on your worksheet that I had there, the graphic organizer, they are divided even further into 3 groups. So you could be in the first class Third Estate, second class Third Estate, or third class Third Estate. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first class. So this is going to be the group all the way to the left on your paper. This is the first class Third Estate. And this group is known as the bourgeoisie. This group here is a group of business people, merchants, artisans, skilled workers. These are the people who are really running the economy outside of agriculture. These are the people who are producing the things that people want to buy other than like food. But this group here is pretty intelligent. They have been able to, start businesses, make those businesses work successfully. And because of that, they have a lot of money. And because they have a lot of money, they educate themselves and their children. So this group of people here, they are the ones who are like living it up in the Enlightenment. They are the ones hosting the salons, hosting the parties. Voltaire belonged to this group. Rousseau belonged to this group. Montesquieu belonged to this group. So, this group here, they're the ones who are pushing the Enlightenment along. And it makes sense when you think about it. Here they were, people who had they were well educated. They had money. They were important to society in terms of what they could do for society. But there's something that's just not right. They pay about 50% of their income in taxes. So 50% of their income went to taxes.